So as I wrote in the title of the video itself, this one mistake reveals whether you have actually understood the very basics of functions, and not just understood, whether you have understood how to apply the basics of what it means to be a function. Because in this question they have given an option very strategically to test exactly that. And this is why I like JEE questions of the very old years, because back then they did not have to necessarily combat students by giving them lengthy questions or questions like that, because frankly there wasn't much material available to students to study, so it was easier to select original thinking back then, so they could just focus on the very basics and select candidates based on that. Don't get me wrong, even today the questions are based on the basics, but they built up on it through many layers. But these questions won't necessarily be lengthy, but they will definitely be exceptionally well crafted. Even in this one you will see that it requires almost no calculation. Let us see it. G of x is a function we define on -1 to 1. The area of the equilateral triangle with two of its vertices at 0, 0 and x, g of x is √3/4. Then the function g of x is. So distance between vertices, we can find the side length. We have two vertices, it's an equilateral triangle. We can just find one side because the area is given. We can find the side length and then we will get g of x in terms of x. So distance between vertices is side length. As you know, distance formula, first point is x comma g of x, the other point is 0 comma 0. It will be x minus 0 whole square gx minus 0 whole square. Remember gx is a point here, right? So let this be a, so √3a square is √3/4, the area given. Again, they have kept the calculations to be extremely simple, so you get nothing but g of x square is 1 minus x square and g of x is plus minus 1 by x square whole under root. So that's it. That's the question. That's the solution. That's the calculation part of this question. So you would have seen that this was a multiple choice question, and so someone who would have solved it and would not have been careful would have selected A, B and C, because all of them are basically g of x is equal to plus minus under root 1 by x square, right? But here's the catch. So when they taught you the very basics of relations and functions, they would have drawn this diagram, and in a relation this one element in set, the first set, can have what we call image, more than one image in this other set. So this is how mapping can be in relation. However, in function, each element in first set has to have only one image in the other set. Two or more elements here can have the same image, but one element cannot have two different images. It is acceptable in relation, but it is not acceptable in function. Similarly, it could have been possible, this is not required for this question, but just for your sake so that you remember it, it could have been possible that any one of this element would not have been mapped to any of these elements. However, in function, all elements of this set have to be mapped. So there has to be some relation. You cannot have D empty here. You can have D empty here, but you cannot have C empty here. You can have A, B, C all empty and only D having a mapping to all three. A lot can go on in relation, but in functions there are two specific rules. All the elements of this set have to be mapped, and one element cannot be mapped to more than two elements from this side. You can leave elements here. It could be possible that 3 was not mapped to any of these. That's possible in function. This set does not have strict requirements, but this set does have. So what does all of it have to do with this question? See this option when you put g of x is equal to plus minus under root 1 by x square. So a function, this set is basically all values of x, and this will be basically all values of the function, right? So in this case, this is x and this is g of x. So here, if you take g of x is equal to plus minus under root of 1 minus x square, whenever you put one value of x, okay, so let's say that you put 0, then you get answer as plus minus 1. So for just one value of x, or for one value of an element in this set, you have two values in this set, which can never take place in a function. It can take place in a relation, but it cannot be the case for a function. So this entirely cannot be true. However, individually they can be true, because here if you put a value of x, g of x will only have one value corresponding to it. Similarly here as well, but here you will have two values. So if you have studied coordinate geometry, you will quickly realize that a circle is not a function. Why? Because very similar to it. When you have a circle and suppose this is the circle, right? So for one value of x, you have more than two values of y, right? Because for one value of x, y can be this or y can be this. So that is why we say that a circle is not a function. That is what I've written. For one value of x in g of x is equal to plus minus under root 1 by x square, you get two values of g of x. Basically similar to how the element a in the diagram above had two images corresponding to it. So this cannot be true. This can't be a function. However, individually you can have this as a function. So these two options are correct. This option is not. Now even today, if they can give you a question which will be a little more difficult than this, but finally when you arrive at the answer, you can have options that are similarly strategically placed to see whether you check those options. And if you check this option, it is highly possible that you get -2 where you would have gotten +4, and it can absolutely derail whatever branch you would have gotten. So the entire point of this video is to make you realize how JEE is always about the basics. It has always been, it will always be. And the focus of this channel is also on that, because we will solve extremely tough questions. That's not the issue. But we will always teach you in a way so that you go step by step, keeping the basics in mind. If you watched all my previous videos, I have specifically answered questions that could be easily solved in 3 minutes, but I've explained them in a very detailed way. So maybe sometimes the videos go to 9 or 10 minutes of length, but because I've repeatedly explain them in a way so that you do not forget the basics and do not make mistakes like this, because that is something that no books will be able to teach you, because they teach you once and then they leave it, right? Because the book has a limited amount of space. Similarly, this is only something that only teachers will be able to do. But sometimes even teachers, because they are in a rush to finish the syllabus, they won't dwell on one point again and again. But if you want such kind of videos, subscribe to the channel. Watch 1 or 2 videos every day or every other or every alternate day, what we say, so that after studying your theory you are grounded and know how to approach questions. And so slowly your problem solving skills will develop, because the more you see questions getting solved, the better you get at them. So for all of that, please subscribe to the channel, and already there is a fair bit portfolio of videos. You can check them out to see other previous year questions which are relatively new to 2026. Thank you.